again, and I'm so glad that you're joining me. Yes, today I am sitting side by side my interviewee, and you're going, who is this silver fox? Well, this is my brother-in-law, Rich, and he's here all the way from Pennsylvania. So it's like, why are you interviewing your brother-in-law? Well, as I've told you before, you know, I grew up on a farm, and for me, there's a big connection between farm food and the food that we put on our tables. Mm-hmm. So today, Rich is a farmer. And Rich is not just a farmer, he's a crop farmer, and he's a progressive farmer. So he uses some of the newer techniques that are out there that we are maybe new to us, but they've been around since the 70s, because what Rich is going to talk about, my dad was a test farmer for this method. And so I like to bring you information of, you know, different things that we can do to make improvements, even if it's just slight improvements. But what Rich is going to talk to us about is called No Till Farming. I will let him explain it, but I think you're going to like what you're going to hear about things that farmers are doing to help not only our environment, but to improve our food. So, Rich, welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, I forgot to say, this is Rich Howard. He is my brother-in-law, yes, of course. But he's also, I told you that he is a farmer. But so, Rich, what is this thing called no-till farming?
Well, no-till farming is where you're not plowing and tilling up the soil, but you are planting with a machine that just makes a slot and puts the seeds in the ground without disturbing the soil, which has a lot of benefits to it. It really cuts down on soil erosion.
Okay.
And we're in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, so we have to be conscious of, you know, runoff into the river, because we're right on the Susquehanna River also.
But yet you're on the river, but a lot of farmers are not on a river or near water. Why do they need to be so conscientious about the watershed?
Well, number one, because no matter where you are, the water, the rain, is going to run downhill into a creek or a stream. So, and get in the river and eventually end up in the Chesapeake Bay. So you want to make sure that anything, you know, that's going to get caught in water doesn't get there if you can help it. So by no-tilling and not disturbing that soil, it keeps stuff from getting in the river.
Okay.
And the other thing that goes along with no-till farming is cover crops.
Okay, I was gonna just ask you about that. What's the importance of the cover crop?
Well, there too, after we plant or while we have a crop in the field, we can still get our cover crop started, or immediately after you take the crop off, you can get the cover crop started, like rye or ryegrass, different species of, you know, grasses and like radishes, turnips, things like that.
Oh, okay. And, I had never thought of those.
Yeah. Well, what they do is they get growing in the fall, and any fertilizer or nutrients that are in the soil still, it will take them up and keep them from eroding into the river or into the, you know.
I just learned something new. I did not know that, because I'm thinking like grasses like clover or rye or something that would come up, that maybe you were planting something and that would just die down once the heat would come along, possibly.
Well, what our goal is with cover crop is to establish that in the fall, to hold that soil and hold the nutrients for the remaining, you know, until spring. And then in the spring, you know, it's going to start growing a little, and then when we get ready to plant, we will kill that and or no-till in it when it's green, even, and get our planting, you know, get our crop started for the next year, and then we'll kill the cover crop off.
So like if you put the turnips or the radishes in, you just kill those? You don't really harvest those?
Well, the turnips and radishes will winter kill because they can't stand the cold. But rye or wheat or rye, clovers and stuff like that, they will not die.
Okay.
And they will still grow back in the spring. And same with ryegrass.
So my other thing is so if this is, say you grow the cover and then the cover dies back, will this decrease the amount over time? Does this decrease the amount of fertilizers that you'll have to use?
Yes, because when those plants die in the spring or in the fall, whatever, they will produce nitrogen for the existing crop that you're growing. And they also cut down on pesticides because a lot of that can prevent weeds from growing that normally grow. So you're cutting down on fertilizer and your pesticides and herbicides that you use.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So when you do the no-till, can you explain to us? I lived on a farm, so I know how the fields are, and you used to seeing in the springtime farmers going out there with what they call a plow and a disc, and they turn the soil over and it's exposed. So this is going to cut down on this, but how does it work? What's the difference in your machinery?
Our difference is we just have a planter with we have row cleaners that clean a little tiny path in front of the unit that puts the seed in the ground, and then there's a little disc that slices a slot, and seed goes in the ground, and then there's two discs in the back, or two spike wheels or wheels that close that little slot.
Oh, so it slices. So it slices a row. It puts in the seed.
Yeah. Okay. My planter has row cleaners in the front, two spiked wheels that clear the debris left from the year before. The next wheel is a no-till disc that slices a little groove in there, and the next discs are V discs that make a little V, puts the seed in the ground, and then the last ones are a spike wheel. And it can be two spike wheels. There's different versions of them, but spike wheels that closes the slot that the seed's in. So you have very little cell disturbance.
Oh, wow.
And the other thing too is with no-till, when you turn the soil up, you literally burn any organic matter that's in that soil. With no-till, you produce organic matter because your worms and everything are still working in the ground, and you're not disturbing and killing all that organic matter.
Cool.
So
that's interesting, because I read up on some of this, before we talked, but I did not think about that part. It wasn't discussed in the articles that I read. I had heard about the erosion and the cover crop and the nutrients. But yes, it's always good to keep those earthworms, working, and those other little people that are supposed to be working underground. How long, if you start doing this, how long does it take before you really don't have to use fertilizer on a field?
Well, I'm not saying you can completely never use fertilizer, but you can cut back on some of the nitrogen that you use by doing this.
And do you do like soil tests?
Yeah, we do soil tests regularly so that we can know where our pH is.
So with this process, what are some of the crops that you work with?
I grow corn, soybeans, and wheat.
And do you produce a larger yield by doing this type of process? Is there a change in the yield that you get?
When you first convert to no-till, sometimes your yield is a little less until you get your organic matter built up, but it will eventually, you can get the same yields or even higher.
Yeah. Now, when you are now I'm just going to get a little technical and talk a little farm talk here, but not all corn is planted for us to eat. Some of it is for animal consumption.
Mhm.
He works with soybeans. Sometimes that's for different consumption. So when you sell your corn and your soybeans and your wheat, what kind of markets do you sell those to?
Well, I just go to a broker in the area and contract that way most of the time. I do sell locally to some dairy farmers and some beef farmers that grow local.
Okay.
And soybeans, I would say they probably go for oil. They could be crushed for, I know they could be used in a variety of ways, but I'm not sure where they go.
Okay.
They get loaded on a train car and I don't know where they end up.
Yeah. So have the last few years been good?
The last 2 years have been very challenging because we've had way too much rain. And our planting season has been wet. So we're very late in getting it in, and it affects the yield in the end.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Here, I'm showing a picture of my monitor and my how that works, and my planter running. It's at nighttime, but you can see row cleaners right in front there. And on the computer screen, it's showing my rows are all planting, and I can tell the population, how many seeds per acre I plant. It tells me what variety I'm planting, and tells me if my planter is doing a good job or a bad job. If it's like rough or smooth, or there's a lot of information you can get off of this, and it's all controlled by GPS. So if I'm planting and I come to where it's already planted, it will automatically shut rows off one at a time.
Oh, okay. So there's no waste.
Yeah, you're not overplanting.
Oh, so it tells you where the seeds are. So you are planting smarter, because I'm sure your costs are very high for your supplies.
Yes, seeds are very expensive.
Yeah, and then we want really cheap food, but that's why it's important to support your farmers.
It can be anywhere from $100 a bag of corn to up to almost $300 a bag, depending on what varieties you get.
Yeah.
And a bag will only plant like 2.5 acres, 2.7 acres.
But using this method and the GPS system and the computers, it allots your seed to better implement the seed into the soil, so that you're not like back in the day, you just swirled seed around and it just flew where it wanted to in some of those fields, and then you hope that your crop came up.
But we still do that. We still hope that our crop comes up.
Yeah.
Because the weather can affect it. I mean, there was a lot of last spring in our area. There was a lot of corn that had to be replanted because it died. It was so wet that it killed it. So,
oh, yeah.
That's the risk we run every year. Every farmer is like, it's a gamble. You don't know what the weather's going to be. We're totally dependent on weather. So that controls, our outcome, and it controls the consumer's price too, because, if products get short, because of that. So far, we can grow a lot of grains in this country, and that's not an issue here, really. But it does affect our price because we almost overproduce sometimes.
Yeah, you don't really want to do that, because then you drives your prices down.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, this is just fascinating, and this is just I love food, and I love talking about food, and I love talking about ways that we can be sustainable in our environment. And so I just want to thank Rich for coming on and being with us today on Weezy. And if you have any questions, I will have a link posted on here and in my post of if you want to learn more about no-till farming. And perhaps one other question real quick. Could you incorporate this in gardening?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My wife does it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're getting ready to plan your, it would be a little late to do this right now, but for next year in the fall, you could put cover crop over your garden and then start practicing no-till gardening. And how would you do, if you have a small garden, how would you do that? How would you get your...
There's a number of different ways. You can get like a straw and lay it down really thick, so it's like a mat, and then make your hole for your seeds. Or if you're a lot of seeds or a lot of gardening stuff you're gonna transplant, it's already started. Like broccoli, squash, tomatoes. So you would just make a hole for that, stick it in the ground, and your straw is all around it. So that's going to keep your weeds from growing, and that you have weed control just like that.
So even if you wanted to this season, you could start with that method, and then after that you could like do the rye or the other little vegetables or something like that.
You wouldn't even really have to do a cover crop in that way, but your straw is going to rot down and
it'll decompose and
or you could do that. You could put rye on there too, and it would grow up through that straw. I mean, it'll grow. Rye grows real easy.
Yeah.
Cereal rye.
One thing you don't know about me that I have not shared with you all. Yes, I grew up on the farm, but I'm also I was a graduate of the Master Gardeners program in Virginia too. So we talked about all these things of grasses, and so I'm kind of a plant nerd and different things that you can do in order to grow. So and I was very integral in the recycling and going into schools and talking to kids about things rotting in the landfills.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, Weezy does have a little bit of knowledge about a lot of things, and I like to share it with you. And so I just want to thank Rich for coming on. And like I said, we will provide a link to if you want to learn more about no-till, where you can find the latest comprehensive information on the web with it. So anyways, let's say bye, Rich.
Bye.
Bye.